Welcome back to the 7th Grade Mustache. On today's episode, we'll be speaking about privilege versus entitlement. In this episode, we'll discuss the economic, social, and racial implications of privilege and entitlement. To be privileged is to have certain immunities to persecution and biases. It represents the levels of freedoms that you enjoy and your level of agency in society. In other words, it's the way society treats you. Privilege can be earned, given through birth, or awarded. It represents access to improved circumstances, such as the finer things in life, i.e., a driver's license, a passport, consumer freedoms like the internet. The internet is one of those things that people really take for granted. And they consider it, well, the internet is free and we can say what we want. They can turn off the internet whenever they want to. And they can call it anything they want to, but they can turn that shit off. The internet is a privilege. People online saying all these things, being shitty to each other, these are things that people take for granted, and it's a privilege. Your driver's license is another thing that people take for granted and don't realize it's a privilege. I'll give you an example. Speeding, driving like an asshole, having a wreck about once a year, twice a year, and it's your fault. That is privilege, but that's really entitlement because you don't realize that you can kill somebody or you can get so many fucking tickets that your fucking driver's license will be taken away. And then you're reminded that it's a privilege.
You think it's like an American right. Like, I'm born American, I can drive. No. No, seriously.
That music you playing in your car is going to your fucking head. That's what's going on.
What it is that people, they take it for granted because, like I said, it's so ingrained in the American culture.
Okay, but that's the thing, though. See, entitlement is what happens when you take your privileges for granted. It's the same lesson that a spoiled child learns when they encounter poor people without the insulation of their family or social bubbles.
You know, I think it's even deeper when somebody gets their ass kicked. Like, what it is that you've been doing this behavior so long that the people in your family have tolerated it. Like, oh, my God. You know, this, you need to feed me, you need to give me this. And then you get in a full-fledged adult situation without that bubble. And then all of a sudden you do that exact same behavior, and it's consequences, like some serious consequences. So that's that reality check. Unfortunately, a lot of these people haven't had it, so they're not learning. They're not seeing that how good they got it or whatever. I love when white people get outraged when something happens to them, and then all of a sudden they realize that you can't talk to police like that. Like, but white people can. We've seen these white women cuss out cops, hit them in the face, slap them. And I'm like, wow, how come she ain't a statistic? But that's the privilege. That's what your privilege grants you. But your privilege does run out. I just hope it doesn't run out for the worse.
A lot of people are talking about right now how the youngest people in our society right now have a sense of entitlement. Well, it comes from somewhere. It comes from their upbringing. It comes from them being not told no. It comes from the fact that they think that somebody owes them something. Nobody owes them anything with the exception of reparations. But that's the thing, though. You have to earn your place in society. You have to earn your keep. Because people find out right away when they leave home that the streets are a motherfucker. That you have to fucking fend for yourself and make a way for yourself in the world to survive. But your education will determine how far you can go in certain circles. And money will determine how much further you can go. Now, you can have no education, but you can hustle your way into a bunch of money and you can rub elbows with all kinds of people. Mm-hmm. But the thing is that money that you made, that wasn't something that was given. You had to scratch and fight and bleed and sweat to get that money. But you got that money, and here you are. And so then you find yourself in a situation where, okay, are these people around me frauds? Are these people around me, were they given their status? Did they earn their status? And so then you see this cross section of these different type of people. In one room, you'll see all of these different types of people. And then you start to see these people, whether they get along or not, you see their differences. Now, in society, of course, we're in American society that we're taught to look for the similarities or the things that bring us together. And that's true. And that's a good thing. That's a good trait. But what happens is that the education that people have, the social status that people have, the zip code that people live in, they start to take these things for granted and they become oblivious to the world outside of theirs. And what has been happening since the 1970s, yeah, probably the 70s, yeah, is that, I'll say with the Vietnam War, is that Americans have become more globally minded. And no. Yes, they have, because war forces you to be globally minded. Or, okay, wait a minute, man. Wait a minute, dude. Or if your parents are not from America, then naturally you're going to be more globally minded, or your mind to be tied to that other country. So, but here's the thing, though. So, when your awareness, see, okay, the entitlement and privilege idea or schism is related to awareness, 100% related to awareness, because when you have these privileges, if you lose sight of them, if your awareness of them shrinks, that is entitlement. That's how a person walks around with their ass on their shoulders, acting like they're the shit, not knowing they can be taken down a notch real quick. All it takes is for you to lose that money. Because, we've seen this a million times. A motherfucker make a bunch of money and they can't sustain this level of living that they weren't used to, and they back down in the ghetto.
Okay, there's several things. See, I've always felt that whenever you date chicks from other countries, that's when you kind of learn how America really doesn't, how we take things for granted. Like, I was dating this chick, and her brother got arrested for just having bullets. She's an African chick. And I'm like, do you have a gun? He's like, nah, they just walked in the apartment and checked him, and he had bullets, and my brother's in jail. So I get what you're saying. What you're saying is when the war happens, then all of a sudden we become more aware of the world setting, but then we go back to, that's the entitlement. We just go back to where we were before, after some time it wears off.
You know what? Okay, so for you, it was dating some chick. For me, it happened earlier. It happened way earlier. It happened when I would encounter people from other countries. See, man, you forget that, like, our neighborhood, we had all different types of people in our neighborhood. We had people from different parts of the world in our neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? And as a kid, with the motherfuckers up street, that was always like the fucking soccer fanatics and shit. Always, they ain't fuck with nobody else that came down the street, went up to the school and fucking played soccer. Them motherfuckers weren't fucking with nobody. And they were some nerds. They were some straight fucking nerds. But hold on. I'm making a point here.
I played soccer with them, though. I played on the same team.
Okay, great. Yeah. Anyway, so, but the thing, but I'm talking about, but they ain't fucking with nobody in the hood, though. They was not fucking with nobody on the block at all. Their mom was Nigerian. Their dad was an Arab. You know what I'm saying? And these motherfuckers was not fucking with nobody. So then you got to wonder, like, all right, so it's got to be their parents, that's on that bullshit, be like, no, y'all don't fuck with them kids out in the street, don't fuck with them black kids. The crazy part, though, is their sister turned out to be cool.
Yeah, both of them.
Yeah. So, but, anyway, that's a whole another thing. But look, so what I'm saying is that the interaction that you have with other cultures informs your perception and your awareness. And
Completely.
dude, when I would go on to the base with my dad when I was a kid, my dad would point out the different types of Asian people and how he would talk about you can tell which type of Asian they are based on the shape of their eyes. And whether they're tall or whether they're short, and and the complexion of the skin. He would tell me about all this stuff, and I was just soaking all this shit up. And so I also started to see the way these different cultures would behave. You know what I mean, dude? I was working for Korean people at fucking 13. You know what I mean? So. Yeah, I had all these cultural interactions at an early age. And so I would see like the different perceptions of, how Asian people behave or African people behave. You know what I'm saying? I mean, my dad had an African homeboy, you know what I'm saying? They would bring his kids over to the house. So like this is like, I was super young, you know what I mean? So I had these interactions and shit. So what I'm saying is that we would have conversations. Me and my dad would talk all the time, right? And we would talk, this wasn't never goo goo gaga kid shit. You remember my dad, man. Like it was always, something that was like building or something that was like knowledge based. And so it was always, something that like, hey, listen, see them people over there? They look like that because of no. Or it was something like this culture is different because of X, Y, Z, and even when he wasn't talking to me about that, I was always very observant, and I would go and observe things. And like when we would get on our bikes and like ride across the entire planet Earth and shit. And
we had no boundaries.
No boundaries, dude. And like, I mean, this is back in the day where like your mom be like, all right, just have your ass back home before it get dark.
But here's the whole thing is also my old shit meter. Like certain times I would use it as an excuse like, hey, I was messing with some kids that I knew was about to get in trouble. I'm like, hey, man, I got to go home. My mom said I can't go past the street. Nah, cuz we seen you over here. Yeah, well, this time I'm using it as an excuse because I detect what y'all about to do.
Look. So, but the crazy part about it is we had privilege, dude. And you know what the privilege was immediately for you and I? Those fucking bikes. Mm-hmm. Then you know what else? The privilege was the fact that our parents gave us the latitude to explore neighborhoods outside of our own. See, a lot of people don't realize that like black people have privilege and they take it for granted. And there's a sense of black entitlement also.
On a personal level, when it comes to that, there's a couple things you said. Like when you were talking about the money thing, if you ever notice, like when you start out as broke, get rich, and go back to broke, y'all be you be upset at yourself for blowing it, but you're cool with it. The thing that me and you always made fun of as kids was all these rich white folks committing suicide. That's because they started out up here and they've never been down there. The fear of going down there, being around those people, and
right.
fear.
Listen. I can be you, but you can't be me.
Be me, yeah. I've been low and high and low and high. You've been high, and the thought of going low messes some people up.
You know what it is, man? You know what it is? It's like a swimming pool. Like you can go to Gallagher and you can fucking like get in the low end and fuck around and shit. And every once in a while you go swim out to the deep end. And when you got too tired, you brought your ass back down to the fucking shallow end. And everybody's like, what's it like down there?
Like, tell me about it.
Yeah, I was like, man, there's bitches and bikinis with big old titties and ass, and man,
it was great.
Yeah.
I remember one time we were talking about a mutual homeboy of ours, and he didn't realize that me and you were close, and he was saying all this stuff about you, and I'm like, dude, I'm with that guy every day. He's not like that. I defended you, but then I backed.
And see, okay, the same thing would happen to you. You know what I'm saying? That the motherfuckers that would talk shit about you. I'm like, y'all really don't know who the fuck he is, man. Like y'all on the outside looking in, and all that shit was just petty jealousy bullshit.
The reason I have a problem with that is I try to be honest about these situations.
But here's the thing though. But you also happen to know some of my adversaries. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, of course, my adversary is going to have the worst opinion of me. You know what I'm saying? They're going to create...
But hold it. Roscoe, what complicates that is that these people, not all these people were some people are adversaries, but some people are quote unquote friends.
No.
And
See, no. See, because if they talking like that, that motherfucker ain't my friend.
No, I agree with you. If they're saying certain things, they're automatic adversaries.
Okay, but we get into inside baseball right now, though.
Yeah. If you don't like me, don't fuck with me. if I, and the thing is, me and you had the conversation. Then this goes back to the privilege versus entitlement. There were all these people that felt that you had traits that they wanted, and they felt that you were wasting your traits. Like, man, this dude is good looking. Man, this dude is this dude is that, and they would talk about you. And I'm like, that's all because they want what you got.
Yeah,
they feel like if I had that, I'd be in a different place.
But see,
and I'm like, nah.
No. See, but here's the thing, though. It's because they're small-minded, and because my father taught me to carry myself in a certain way. But it wasn't. You know what it was? It wasn't just him, though. I mean, he contributed to that. But I live in my body. I know who the fuck I am. I know what my face looks like. You know what I'm saying? Like, all this bullshit. I know who I am, man. But I knew that I wasn't going to use this bullshit to get by. Because, you know what I'm saying? Like, it started with the papers, man. And I lived with the privilege of having parents buy shit for me until I was 10 years old. That's not a long fucking time. You know what I'm saying? That's not a long... That's a little kid, dude. Like, who the fuck is going to get mad at a little kid for his parents buying him shit? That's parenthood. That's love, motherfucker. Like, if you don't have it, nigga, that's your problem. But listen, this is what I'm going to say. Hold on. Because
some parents shit.
Yes, but parents. Motherfucker, I'm tired of this shit. Listen, so when I was 10, I wanted some Jordans. My dad was like, them shits is expensive. I'm not buying them shoes because you're going to tear them up. He said, if you want to buy those $100 shoes, then you can go get yourself a job. Well, I said, all right, then. Cool, man. So what did I do? I went out and I got a paper route. And I would save my money up. And the first thing that I bought was a waterbed. And people can't wrap their mind around that. Like, why does this 10-year-old kid have a waterbed? Because I fucking earned the right to go out and buy this shit. Because that's what I wanted. More than I wanted a pair of shoes, I wanted a comfortable bed to sleep in that was fucking... In the Midwest, it's cold. And I slept in the basement. So fuck it. I want a warm fucking bed I can fucking heat up and live like a fucking king. And guess what? I sure did. But it didn't stop there because I looked around my room. I was like, man, I want to watch some movies. And you and I was like VCR fanatics back then. You know, you would call me and you'd tell me like, hey man, this show, you gotta watch this shit. This shit's crazy. For real? You like and you would record the shit.
We literally had
we had you know that the Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark at the end where he's pushing that box in that fucking warehouse. That's how many fucking VHS tapes we had, okay? So I had to get myself.
We had 17 VCRs a month.
Yes,
20.
Yes. But when I got my first VCR, see, that's what one of the things that added to my fascination with filmmaking is that I could record movies, I could record TV shows, and I could put whatever I wanted on a tape. I could create a mixtape of movies and TV shows. I could put a Chicago Bulls game at the beginning of a tape, and then I could put G.I. Joe after that, and then put Thundercats after that on one fucking tape. And that's like my little mixtape. And all I gotta do is hit fast forward, and I can just go skip to the next thing. But look, all of that is a privilege. And I learned to appreciate that privilege, but I was always aware of it. I knew that something could happen and that source of money would be gone.
You'd be taken away.
Yeah, man. And so I never had a sense of entitlement. You know what I'm saying? Like I never treated anybody like shit because of who I was or what I've earned. I've never done that. If anybody, if I was ever like an asshole toward anybody, it's because that person was an asshole. Because I've always been like a mirror. So if you cool with me, I'm cool with you. But if you a shithead, then go fuck yourself.
Look. The whole point to this is that people, sometimes that shit is perception. Sometimes people perceive you one way, and then you realize their perception is jaded for other reasons. Like like I said, I've known that I can lose it all several times. I've started over multiple times. Not because sometimes because of bad shit.
Okay, but slow that down right there before you just gloss over that shit. You just said that you have started over several times.
Yeah.
Psychologically, go into that. I don't need the detail about how you lost the money and all that bullshit, but I'm talking about like the dip. Like the dip where it's like, okay, before you get into that, there was this funny ass joke that Chris Rock used to tell back in the day. And he would say, white people and black people got different problems. He would say, black people's like, no, he said a white guy's like, oh, I only drive a BMW and I only got a 3.8 GPA. Oh, my life is terrible. And then you got the black person, same age, is like, my sister is pregnant and she's only 14. We're on welfare. You know what I'm saying? Like totally different problems, like a perfect example of like privilege and shit. But you are talking about how you was like flesh and then you went to famine several times.
A bunch of times. Sometimes it's planned though. Like there's a thing called college. That's planned. That's a planned famine. You might not realize that because when you're in high school, you think college is the promised land. But when you're in college, you're broker than broke. And people don't realize that when you're in school, you're actually broker than you were when you grew up. We grew up middle class. We had good, bad days, whatever. But so when you're in school, it's worse because you're actually on your own. Your support system might not be there. But for me, me and you were born in the 70s. So there's a thing that you heard me talk about before called the fuck it switch. Sometimes when somebody hits that fuck it switch, I'm going to spend the night in jail. Or, you know what? I'm going to let this job go because somebody can't keep talking to me like this.
Hold on a second. How many times, dude, back in the day in the 90s, you could fucking quit one job.
Yeah, see,
and go across the street and get another fucking job like it was nothing. Like, you know what? I ain't putting up with this bullshit. I'm gone. Fuck y'all. And walk straight out.
Growing up in the Midwest, we grew up in Omaha. There was a lot of telemarketing agencies. So we were making $12 to $21 an hour.
All these fucking call centers and shit. It was everything from like outbound to inbound calls to credit card companies. Cable, everything. And see, the reason why is because we have a flat dialect. The way Duct Tape and I talk is the way everybody in the Midwest talks because we don't have a dialect. And that's why there was like a huge hub for call centers for a long time.
But you literally were making 15, 7. What people are making now.
You were making grown folks' money in fucking high school.
Yes. And look, in fact, remember my mom stopped me from working there. She's like, oh, you can't work there. You're going to mess up your FIFA. You're going to mess up your financial aid. I'm like, Mom, everybody else. So my mom literally made me quit these jobs because she's like, you're going to mess up your financial aid. It's going to be you're having an adult money at this, but that's another conversation. So what I'm saying is that we literally, you would get frustrated, get pissed off, and I said 93. It went on past 93 because after college we would come back or we would work, and I would have a homeboy like literally working like, hey man, I quit them. That's when they started making a database. Like you couldn't quit one and go to another one, but we were making $20 an hour back then. And so when somebody talks to you crazy, or they like, hey man, you got too many points. I don't want to mess it up, so I can't work here no more. You would quit, go work at another one. And so that is privilege because that shit ain't going on right now. That shit ain't going on. And so that was something that people didn't understand, that we literally would go from job to job still making $17 an hour. Commission. Even when I was in college, I worked at the cable company in Oklahoma. Again, I think the base was like $12, $13 an hour. But when I sold a bunch of HBO Cinemax packages, I would get $20, $30 an hour. So even in college, that trend went on. And that's what's even more frustrating about what we're going through now. That first recession we hit like in 2006, I remember your brother was visiting, and we were talking to him, and you were like, he was like, nah, cuz what he's saying is happening everywhere. And at the time, because he was explaining he's working at a news station, they're forming out the jobs, and they're driving the wages down. And I'm like, bruh, they're doing that everywhere. It's not just your market. And what was frustrating when 06, 08, whatever that was over, and the recession was over, the wages didn't go back up. And every time we have one of these fucking recessions, shit goes down and doesn't come all the way back up. So that's why right now we're sitting at $15-16 an hour 30 years later. Which, back to what you were originally asking me, yeah, I started over a bunch of times. You know, whether I left the job, whether I made a bad decision, whether it was just, like I said, college. It was a planned famine, you know, and people. So, like I said, me and you've been up and down. So
But that's the thing, though. But that's the thing, is because when you go back down, you're familiar with that territory.
Yeah. You have certain skills that you know that
I have a certain set of skills.
Toolbox for me to get through this.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a physical toolbox, and sometimes it's a mental toolbox.
It's both.
But because I might I'm old. It takes a couple of days to kind of, what the fuck did I do? Let me come up with a plan.
No, but listen, you know, this is the crazy part. You know, at that level, what kind of food you're going to eat.
Yes.
You know what type of chicks you can fuck with. You know what your vices, if you're going to drink certain much or you're going to smoke a little bit. You know how much your budgeting and what your latitude is.
Budget, yes. Budget.
And you know,
preach on that.
And you know where you can exist in this spectrum to have your joy. You know where you can experience joy. And the budgeting is like, all right, you know that, like, all right, cool. So I was making $500 a week, and now I'm down to like $300 a week, or I'm down to like $200 or something like that. And it's, you know, that even at the lowest budget, you know how you can eke out an existence and it still be happy. See, that's the thing, is because you can
budget
always
ain't financial. Budget's not financial. See, a budget could be everything from pussy to weed or whatever.
Hello,
you know what?
But see, happiness is budget.
Yes.
Is free from budget. You know what I'm saying? Is budget agnostic. So yeah.
Hey, okay. In economics, that's called a surplus item. So Roman noodles are a surplus item. So you're poor, you start making more money, you buy more Roman noodles. You make more money, you buy Roman noodles. But then you make a lot of money, you stop buying Roman noodles, you start buying steak. That's right. That's a surplus item.
But also that goes back to a certain mindset that comes from older people in your generation, because you realize to have a pantry is to have a bank of food that you can draw from and you can replenish when you have more money.
But go back to that budget, because you were talking about happiness and something that's budget friendly or outside the budget. But for instance, pussy. Pussy is, talk about it.
Listen, you can fuck at every level in your life. Okay, there's pussy at every level in life.
Let's talk about privilege. Let's talk about privilege. So, one, pussy does make the time go by quicker. So if you're getting some, you don't always realize how broke you are, how destitute you are, and that's the reason I got fat, because I was still hitting pretty women, and I let myself go. So, you know, when you're still doing the same things you were doing before, you don't always realize that, hey, I'm not where I need to be. But when you're having sex consistently, sometimes it makes the time go by quicker. You'll look up, it's 3 months later, I've accumulated money. You know, I've sat back because I was enjoying myself. Mm-hmm. Now, let's talk about the privilege part of the pussy. So it was me and my two homeboys. You know both homeboys. One passed. And so we're out at the club. And it was a spur of the moment thing. And the one homeboy, he was so-called a fashion model, whatever, always dressed nice, whatever. Literally was a fashion model. He thought much of himself. Me and my other homeboy, we were out working, and he calls, hey, let's go to the club. It's ladies' night. It's college, so we all jump in the car. Rest in peace. Daddy had on sweatpants, right? He wasn't all dressed. We get to the club. He pulled the most women that night. So the fashion model's like, how are you macking bitches with
because the women were intimidated by the fashion model, and the guy because the
opposite.
And the guy and the guy that had on night pants and, you know what I'm saying, some regular ass civilian looking clothes, super relaxed, caused these women to relax and drop their guard because they felt like they could just talk to him.
Don't forget, he also had charisma.
But I'm talking about the external. I mean, yeah. Yeah.
I know
I'm not talking about the tractor beam. I'm talking about the appearance of the ship.
So the thing is, you can't quantitate charisma. Well, charisma works in all these different situations.
It's the X factor.
Yes, the X factor. So when you're broke, you know, your charisma was going to, like,
Bro, I could always
I'm
listen, man. Always get chicks above my pay grade all the time, whether I got money or whether I don't have money.
it ain't got nothing to do with money.
And
But
it's all about the X factor. You know what I'm saying?
hey, check this out. This is gonna blow. If we got any white listeners, this is gonna blow your mind. Look, I've been broke 1,000 times. I never suffered from depression. The only thing that ever made me suffer from depression was bad relationships or something at my job, and it wasn't the money. I've been depressed. So, but being broke by itself, that don't depress me. Being up and down don't bother me. Coming all the way back down to square one, I pray. I call my mom. I call my partner Roscoe. Have a couple talks, and then next thing I know, I'm back on.
You back
on
in
my
the game.
grind, creating, because that's the Elohim in you. That's the God in you. You must create. If you don't believe in creating, then you'll always stay at the bottom. You'll always be there. So you must create. That's that. See, I have just the opposite when it comes to my entitlement. My entitlement is I'm going to get it on my own. There's no one that can stop me from getting something. There's no one that can stand in my way. That's my entitlement. I know that we're using that word negatively, but entitlement is also a good thing, because me and you walk in a room and we'll scope. Okay, size them up. Whether it's women, whether it's business, whether it's money, who's
listen,
what?
If you've ever seen the movie Predator, when they have the infrared scan, and
I got that.
That's that. Or you seen RoboCop, they can show you what the threat is. It's both of those in one.
Look, like I said, the whole entitlement thing is something that people don't realize until they get in trouble. Then they're, okay, was I entitled? And sometimes, we throw those terms around. I got stepkids, I got kids, and they were entitled. I spoiled them. Some of that stuff is my fault, and I admit that. But the thing is, you spoil them out of love, but I also gave them the reality. Like, look, my only desire for you is for you to be successful. The problem with that, people pick their own successes, and sometimes people aim a little low. But you can't be afraid of success, and you can't sit here and think that they're going to give it to you. You see all these NBA players, you see all these athletes go bust, and all this other stuff, and they talk about it. And I had a real good friend of mine. We're still friends, and we ended up working together. I've known him since high school. He was older than me, and he played football for Iowa State. And he said some real deep shit to me. He talks simple, whatever people don't realize. His degree's in engineering, smart dude. I said, hey, how come you didn't go pro? He said, man, I had a couple tryouts with the Dallas Cowboys. I did one. I didn't go back. I said, why not, man? You think of money and women. He said, I went to Iowa State. I played running back for Iowa State. He said, you do not know what it's like. He's like, you don't know what it's like when, he said, duct tape, check this out. If I fumble a football and everybody, all 80,000 people in that stadium see it, for the next 2 weeks, I'm at the grocery store. I got an old lady telling me, you should hold the football higher. He said, what you don't understand is when you mess up at work,
the scrutiny,
nobody knows. You're able to correct that shit. But when you play these sports and you mess up, everybody knows your business and everybody has an opinion about it.
So the pressure,
I'm a private person.
The pressure is what he didn't want to deal with.
Yeah, and it's not because he's weak. It's because he made a conscious decision. He's like, this is not a lifestyle I want. He said, I got tired of, because I can't remember Iowa State is in the Ames or Iowa. I can't remember what city he's in. He said the whole city knew my face. The whole city knew where I went to high school. They knew I went to Omaha South. Everybody knew my stats.
They got your file card. They're fucking your shit all the time.
He's like, that's not. I didn't like it. I didn't like people knowing stuff and just starting a conversation with me about something that it's not their business. And so he's like, you don't understand what it's like when the worst day you've ever had is going to be amplified because everybody knows it, everybody sees it. And like I said, he made a conscious decision not to play pro ball. And like I said, I've known him for years. Good dude, good family man. So when you talk to him and he opens up to you, it's some crazy shit because, again, he ain't no weak cat. He just made a decision like, you know what, this ain't for me. I'm not pretending like it. I don't like people walking up to me thinking they know me because they know my number, because they know the number on my jersey. So that's the kind of thing that, like I said, the people walking up to him, that's privilege. It's just the opposite. They're taking for granted that this cat has a life. He's a real person, and the things you're saying to him, you think because he wears the jersey of your team, you have the right to say these things to him. That will get your ass kicked sometimes. So this privilege versus entitlement is crazy because, like I said,
that's an entitlement of the fans feeling that they have the right to approach these people and talk shit to them.
Like they own you. Like they really feel that way. And so on the same token, growing up, I didn't understand this. I remember when the NFL went on strike the first time. We were kids, and this is how the world's changed. It was like 83, 84. Them NFL players were showing up with shotguns and guns at the stadium. Y'all don't know how bad it was. You got these young cats watching sports now. Y'all don't get what it was like. And so all I knew is I couldn't see the New York Giants play, so I was pissed. I'm older now. I work, in a union setting. So when the NBA had the lockout, you had all these people dissing the players. And this tells you the NBA is predominantly black. You got a bunch of black millionaires. All they care about is niggas shoot the ball. But you don't understand something. It was a lockout. They didn't walk off the court. They were locked out. Why were they locked out? Well, the NBA had a contract saying that half the money that the owners get goes to the players. The players found out the owners were hiding money. They were stealing money from the players. The players find it out. They said, hey, y'all ain't paying us all our money. And the owners, instead of saying, hey, sorry, my bad, you caught us, they locked them out and forced them to renegotiate the contract. So that means it's the owners that's the problem. But of course, I do labor now. I get it. But when I was a kid, I'd be on the side of these white fans yelling, just play, shut up and dribble. But the truth is, the owners got caught stealing money from the players. The players spoke up. So my perception changes. I'm thinking these are some entitled basketball playing. Just look, nigga, all you do is dribble the ball. You mean to tell me you can't dribble? Nah. Somebody robbed them. A rich person robbed a poor person. And don't get me wrong, they're millionaires, but those owners are billionaires. And so until you understand what's really going on, you're going to accuse these men of being entitled. You've been playing basketball your whole life. You're playing a kid's game. It's not that. This is my job. This is what I do for a living. This is where I work at. And my boss just stole from me. And I ain't got the right to speak up. I ain't got the right to exercise my union, my American right. So we throw the word around, but them niggas ain't entitled. Okay? Y'all need to do your research and figure out what's going on before you start. Because it's easy. I get it. You want to call them stupid. They're not stupid.
So there is an exorbitant amount of academic cowardice being practiced by the presidents of universities. And it is shown when they are challenged by their students and they back down over and over again. Universities have become breeding grounds for privilege and massive amounts of entitlement. It is entitlement that has given rise to the cancel culture. So all this goes back very, very far. All right. So Friedrich Hegel, which is the guy that created the concept of the Hegelian dialect, this thing that people mention all the time without really understanding the man behind the story. And Friedrich Hegel, he was actually the founder of what will become socialism and communism. And so Hegel he argued for the right of slave masters to keep their slaves in America. See, a lot of people don't know this until you go and dig this up. Mm-hmm. But these radical ideas were given this fancy window dressing, and it's a type of ideology that was taught to a whole lot of American intellectuals and college professors. You see, the graduate school system in America is a direct import from Germany, and the Hegelian, what they call historical schools, in the 1860s and the 1880s, all these American professors and all these American intellectuals were going to these historical schools that were founded by Friedrich Hegel. And this type of thinking was one that put an administrative state above people. And it was one that would dictate that the rights of the people are created by an administrative state that is a smaller body, a smaller body of people that are appointed. And not elected, appointed. So this goes against democracy. And it also talked about how the rights of people that are being subordinated or that are subordinate to more powerful people, well, that's their lot in life, and they just have to accept it.
Yeah, that's their social status, and there's no way out of it.
Correct. Wait a minute. And so this is how socialism was created, and it was created through this ideology. But these newly graduate school system was brought to America, and these professors began teaching this in the United States, and this ideology of Friedrich Hegel, not realizing that this is a guy that supported the idea of slavery, the institution of slavery, who, had he lived long enough, would have been a goose-stepping Nazi. So this is the historical background that has created this entitlement, because these bubbles that professors live in, protected by tenure on universities, allow them to create these radical ideas and to teach this to young people who then go out into the world and spread these ideas amongst people who don't know any better, who don't possess the critical thinking to challenge this bullshit head on.
But also the status of the professor has these people thinking they're authority. This is what we're dealing with right now with this whole COVID. Oh, he's an expert. She's an expert. And we're supposed to just follow that shit.
Okay, but that's a good example, because Michael Yinden, he was the ex-vice president of Pfizer, has been extremely vocal about vaccines and how they could possibly be making women infertile.
Mm-hmm.
But now you have all of these news organizations that want to silence him, because those news organizations have executives that report directly to intelligence agencies. And that is Operation Mockingbird. But see, I'm bringing all this up to tell you that the institutions in universities are engines for chaos and derision. There was the Soviet KGB agent that defected to Canada. His name is Yuri Bezmenov. And he talked about the 4 levels of derision. And one of those levels spoke to creating an ideology, an environment on universities where radical ideas would disrupt everyday life. And that is where we are now, because you have people that want to call themselves foxkin. They want to say their gender is an animal. They want to say that they have this right and that right, and you're offending my personal civil liberties and blah, 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 and all this belly aching because they're hinging everything on privilege. And because of that, they've completely lost any awareness, and it's become entitlement. So you have a whole new generation of young people that believe that they have the right to tell other people how to behave. What nobody is really watching is that this is fascism being born. This is a utilitarian utopia. No, not utopia, but it's actually a police state mentality. It is a Nazi bow down and do as I say type of thinking. What they have become, what they have become is what they despise, and they don't realize it. Slow
down. That's important, because okay, when I say utopia, that's actually what they describe it as. Remember, they say a workers' utopia, or this is a social utopia, and we're engineering it, we're orchestrating it. Those are all Nazi words. We talked about eugenics. They don't use the word eugenics; they use planning, like Planned Parenthood.
Right, but see, Hitler was a labor leader and
Yes,
a socialist. So, yeah, man. I mean, so yeah, that makes sense.
Here's the deal. We've always talked about China, how far back they go with controlling their people, but the specialists in recent times, for like 1600s and 1500s and stuff like that, were the Germans. In South Carolina, I think in 1700s, when they were having a problem with the slaves, they went to Germany. They went to Blumenbach. They said, "Hey, we can't get these people to work for us. We can't get these people. They're slaves." And he said, "Well." He said, "Do you know where you're from? Do you know the city that you're from?" You're like, "Yeah." He said, "Well, have you ever heard of the Songhai Empire?" And the slave owner said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, so have your slaves. As long as your slaves know that they come from those people, they'll never be slaves. You can't enslave a person who came from an empire, who conquered a whole continent. So your slave, so you have to erase that memory from your slave's mind. And so this is a construct. The reason black folks are the way they are in America is a construct. It was done on purpose. And this tells you that in Germany, they have been oppressing their people intentionally for years, manipulating them. So when the Nazis come along, they had honed the skills over decades, over centuries, of how to control people socially. You can enslave somebody with a gun or with chains, but when you change that mind, you ain't got to put up that fight no more, because eventually, you'll run out of money. If you got to beat up people and do this shit physical, you will run out of resources to keep those people in check. But if you can get somebody's mind, these people specialize that. Look up, I think it's Johann Blumenbach. Look him up, and you'll realize a lot of this stuff he made up and they used.
Okay, check this out. So the Haitian slavery revolution began on August 22nd, 1791, and ended in 1804. Friedrich Hegel had something to say about that because he wrote about it, and he wrote about the master and slave dialectic.
Yes,
and
yes.
It was also translated as lordship and bondage. So basically, what this guy was saying is that these people have a right to subordinate these people, and basically control them. So. And the reason, so what it's saying is that there is a level of control that is allowed because these people are considered less than. So, but all you have to do is dress this up and couch this in fancy wording and doublespeak.
Yes.
People fall for doublespeak all the time.
This goes back to our previous broadcast. People want to sound smart, not be smart. It's easy to manipulate people when you use these technical terms, or you give somebody a title and you're like, "Oh, he knows what he's talking about. She gets it." No, they don't.
Right. So, yeah. So the thing is that, like, okay, the reason why Hegel is relevant to this conversation, because it is about privilege. It is about privilege and how this privilege run amok has created this sense of entitlement in young people today. It is not new. And you have to go back into history to see where these seeds were planted and how old the tree is that is still bearing fruit today. So these people that you see on social media that want to bellyache about everything, see, what they do is they call for the cancellation of somebody because they can't take them on by themselves. So because they don't have enough power to confront this person on their own, they then want to say, well, hey, guys, let's gang up on this person and we can take him out. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
he's bad. Don't you know he's bad? She's bad. She shouldn't talk like that.
Right. You're wanting to influence everybody else's thinking. See? And then you're creating all these rules for thee and not for me. See that? Same thing happened with these governors in California. This guy, Gavin Newsom, had a winery that was open, is still open all through quarantine, all through lockdown, he had people stomping them fucking grapes for him. This motherfucker was going to restaurants, no mask on, free balling, not giving a shit. Rules for thee, not for me. Your boy Cruz trying to jump on a plane and go to fucking Cancun where everybody in fucking Texas is freezing their ass off with no electricity and no water.
Now, hold it. Now, you know how we feel about COVID, vaccines, yeah. But more importantly, we're discussing that privilege, that behavior. You need to understand this behavior is wrong, but also that these people feel that they're the ruling class. They feel like they're like, okay, do as I say, not as I do. That's some fucked up shit. Not in this day and age. We're all equal, and even dumb people are equal. Still, they got rights. And I might not agree with you wearing a mask, but if you make the law that I gotta wear a mask, then you gotta wear a mask too. You don't get the point and tell me how to do shit.
Okay, so going back to privilege and white privilege. Privilege is how you're treated in society. It's the immunities that you have to bias. And white people, whether they recognize it or not, have privilege that other people don't have. Americans have privileges that other people don't have. Black people have certain privileges and have abused those privileges when it comes to other people of color. That is wrong because of what we have gone through and what we have suffered through. We should not be shitty to other people of color because, okay, now if it's on the basis of, you know, somebody being an asshole to another person, okay, cool. But I would always have a problem with other black people talking shit about other races for no reason. And I would call it out right away. And I'm like, dude, you ain't no different than a white man right now. You ain't no different than a racist ass cracker that wants to suppress people. See, but the only difference is that black person was being prejudiced. They weren't being racist. You got to know the difference. They weren't using power to suppress these people. They were just being a bigot. And I'm like, I said,
being an asshole.
Yeah, you're being an asshole shit. You know what I'm saying? Like
generalizations, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it was. I mean, dude, from the smallest things, like when I was working for Korean people when I was, 13 and shit, and dealing with that shit, and they're just black folks being ignorant. You know what I mean? Being ignorant as shit. And I'm like, dude, and I would call it out. At 13, I was like, if you act this way, then you are no different than the people that you hate and the people that hate you.
When you deal with an oppressive society, when we talk about privilege and all this other stuff, that becomes your goal. You want to become the oppressor, and that's not what I want to be. I want to be successful. I want to take care of my family and be happy, but I don't want to become the oppressor. But it's very easy for people to become infatuated with the oppressor. And that's where that privilege comes in, because all they want is a privilege. And that's the problem when you deal with socialism and Marxism.
That's also the Willie Lynch syndrome.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, let's not forget Willie Lynch syndrome. But what happens is that all you want to do is be able to step on other people. And, okay, I'm a government official. I'm this. I have that power. That kind of stuff. And when that becomes your goal, sometimes you don't realize it. You don't realize that's what you're doing. That's all you're kind of. Being a successful black person does not make me a white person. Period. That's all I was going to say.
So, but check this out. A lot of people talk about they want to be a boss. What's going on there? Because do you want to be a boss? Do you want to control people? Do you want to bark and give orders to motherfuckers? Or do you want financial freedom? What's going on here? What's the end game?
I can dictate my own destiny. I can dictate.
But that's not being a boss, though. That's not being a boss at all. Because you're a free man. You're a free person. Like, you're free. A boss is somebody that just wants to be in control of some shit. And I've worked for plenty of bosses in my life. Some good, some bad. The last thing I need in my life is somebody calling themselves a boss. Again. You know what I'm saying? I'm bossy. No, you an asshole. Let's just call that shit exactly what it is. You a fucking asshole. You ain't no fucking boss. Yeah. Just call it like what it is. Like, I mean, you a boss? Boss of what? You a boss of some weak ass people? What kind of organization you running? You know what I'm saying? You a boss. What the fuck is that supposed to be, man? Straight up,
You're
like
intimidating somebody.
yeah, like you want to intimidate me? No, okay. You're not a boss. You just want to be a thug, and I know how to deal with thugs. You know what I'm saying? Like there's all types of shit I can do to people that want to be tough guys. You know, like I don't.
Period.
Yeah, like people get caught up in terms and don't look beyond it. They want to eat the cake just because they like the way the icing looks.
There's no substance there, and like I said, it's still a negative behavior. It's still intimidation. It's still you're trying to control somebody, not based on their well-being or you caring or them allowing you to. People can elect a leader. Ain't nobody elect you. Ain't nobody elect you to be. So, look, stop becoming the oppressor.
You know what it is? You know what it is? You know what it is? Okay. A bully. Bluto. Okay. Bluto walked around with entitlement until Popeye ate that spinach and beat the brakes off his ass.
And corrected that shit. Corrected that behavior.
Yes. That motherfucker chin checked him. You know what I'm saying? He put his ass in his place. But that's the thing though. Bluto was all about that entitlement. That motherfucker walked around. I'm mean,
I'm
you know what I
I'm
mean?
Bigger than you.
Yes. And I'm the big dog and I'm a boss, blah, 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 blah. Until Popeye whooped that ass. You know? But that's the whole thing is that you have to put all these Blutos in the world in check. You have to. Now, see, some people don't like confrontation. I get that. But there's ways that you can practice what Bruce said is the art of fighting without fighting. So for the passive people, that's cool. You practice the art of fighting without fighting. Me, I can do both. I can, you know, lay the hands on a motherfucker like a Shaolin preacher, or I can do the fucking fighting without fighting. You know what I mean? But there's different ways to go about it. Just so long as you address it, just so long as you stop allowing these sociopaths, these narcissists, to go out and wreak psychological warfare on everybody that will allow it. You see, these spoiled brats, these people who've never been punched in the fucking face. Let's tell it like it is. You ain't been in a fight if you're talking like that. You've never been in a fight if you were complaining about some old candy ass pussy shit like that. Straight up.
But you know, now the oppressor is banking on that. Like if your kid gets in a fight in school, they expel them or they get in super trouble. Like
super trouble.
So what they're doing is they're punishing you for speaking up, for actually having an opinion, for taking care of yourself. So now the oppressor knows that, hey, the people I'm oppressing, they ain't gonna rise up because they don't know how to fight. And when I say fight, you know, black folks have, you know, there's other ways of fighting besides physical. But we tend to know how to physically fight, but not always know how to government fight or legally fight or that kind of stuff. And we need to work on that. I get it. But just so you know, that when you know how to fight, you get shit done. Like, white folks call the congressmen and senators, you heard us talk about that shit, that's how they fight. So we don't always know the rules of engagement. Right. You've got to know the rules of engagement.
Or when they're fighting on a smaller stage, then they hit you in the pocket. Man, listen.
Because they know your money's going to run out.
Exactly. Or they use gentrification. You see, warfare happens on economic levels too. And so long as you got these pumped up kids walking around focused on everything in front of them and not the for sale sign 10 feet behind them, they're always going to lose. They're not going to see how the neighborhood is changing and the hand that is pushing those dominoes down, the hand that's how they use entitlement and privilege against you. Right. Because you think you're entitled to this money, but you're not paying attention to the bigger picture. You know, that's always the issue. If you're not seeing the bigger picture, you can lose your whole legacy. You can lose a whole neighborhood. You can lose family plots and all that stuff. Who is paying the contractor that is knocking down those homes? That's what you need to be concerned with. That's what you got to attack.
Yes.
You got to go to these town hall meetings and vote on things. See, that's where warfare happens at a local level, small, very small. Because when you go to those meetings at City Hall, you will see who are the people behind these plans. But see, I'm using City Hall and I'm using gentrification as an idea for privilege and entitlement, because these people who want to change your neighborhood have a sense of entitlement. And it's the same people that felt they had to push all the Native Americans off their land as they move west from the East Coast coming from England, and bring these Africans that they brought from Africa and put them on these new plantations and make them work them for them. That's all privilege. That's all entitlement. They call it manifest destiny. Manifest destiny is the biggest example of white privilege and entitlement.
But it's a hustle. When they use those big words, and you think, okay, cool, you're right. I shouldn't complain. No, you should complain. You should speak up. The idea that we don't always recognize. Here's a privilege. You believe that these politicians who you may have elected, may not have elected, have your best interests at heart, and you don't need to pay attention to politics. You don't need to pay attention to that City Hall shit because I voted for them. They agree with me. No. You agreed with them on one or two issues, and you didn't like the other guy at all because he was white or black or she was this or that. And so you voted for this motherfucker who does not believe like you, doesn't have the same struggles that you have. And so, of course, if it's time to build a shopping mall, they're going to take down your shit. If it's time to build a new arena, they built all the new arenas in black parts of town, destitute, bought up the land for cheap, drove the price down, bought the land for cheap, and then didn't pay. So, yes, that's the shit. Your entitlement will blind you to your detriment. You understand that? So,
okay.
Wake the fuck up.
Here's the thing. This critical race theory, don't get caught up in that bullshit. What that is a distraction. That is meant to take your mind off the ball, because that comes from derision. That comes from a university. That comes from privileged, entitled college professors and his students not living in everyday reality, failing upward, living off of test taking, and not learning a trade and working with their hands or using their mind every day to make a living. These people live in this bubble, and they want to equate race with everything, when sometimes it's just money, when sometimes it's about destroying nations. And so long as you are focused on this small minutia, these things that don't bring any relevancy or any improvement, your level of living, then you will be a pawn in a game that is being played on a chessboard in another country.
How do we say this? Race is an artificial construct, and this shit is designed to keep us down. This is the whole point of this bullshit. And when you realize this shit was done in the classroom, when you realize this was a plan. See, the whole idea that they tell you about racism is you just got people that don't like other people because they're color, not realizing that they were taught this, that this was passed to them, that somebody sat over in Germany and came up with this idea and gave it to them, and then realized that it was perpetuated over the years through all kinds of other shit. So when you realize this was on purpose, when you realize that this is a hustle, then you kind of get intelligent and you back off like, okay, I ain't going to fall for that shit. But it's hard for people don't come to that conclusion right away. They do not come to that conclusion. They come to all kinds of other conclusions and think that, I was taught this by my grandma. Well, you were taught this because they were taught it in the classroom. So this is on purpose. This is the most powerful, invisible hand shit that there is. So don't fall for it. It's bullshit. That's all we're trying to tell you. And yeah, your entitlement can blind you. The privilege, that makes you soft. That makes you not work. That makes you not live up to your full potential because you know, even if I fuck up, I'm gonna be okay. I can fail up. I ain't gotta really know what's going on around me because hey, I'm white. I'm cool. Well, but look, we'll run out.
The same thing applies to black people too. Don't think just because you black and you American that other races won't get theirs. Don't think that you can just sit on your laurels and get a government check and it's okay. Even though Yeah, these stimulus checks are all the rage now. And it's okay to sit back and get a welfare check. So now what they've managed to do is get these people that were used to working hourly wages or working for a living, so used to sucking on the government titty that they feel entitled and they don't have to go back to work anymore. So this is dangerous thinking because this makes a country soft and it makes them more open to attack. It can be mental, psychological, economical, or physical eventually at some point, but it makes you open to attack. When you are reactionary, when you are always focused on critical race theory and you're reactionary and you're focused on these small things, you are that elephant that is being controlled by a gnat in its ear. So this entire show has been about the differences between entitlement and privilege. Entitlement and privilege. So the long story short is that there is a difference between the two, but understand your privilege, don't abuse your privilege, and for sure, do not walk around with a sense of entitlement and raise your kids to not walk around with a sense of entitlement. So that's all I'm saying. We out. Peace.
All back.